Sarah Matthews had spent weeks planning her son Ethan's 7th birthday party. The backyard was decorated with superhero balloons, a bounce house stood in the corner, and 15 excited children were playing games under the warm May sunshine. Sarah was in the kitchen cutting the Batman-themed cake when her husband Mike called out, "Honey, have you seen Ethan? It's time for the cake." Sarah frowned. She'd seen him just 10 minutes ago racing around with his friends. "Check by the treehouse," she called back, arranging 7 candles carefully. But Mike returned with a worried expression. Soon, all the adults were searching. The children were gathered, questioned. No one had seen Ethan for at least 15 minutes. The cake sat forgotten as panic set in. Within an hour, their home was filled with police officers, and what had begun as a celebration became the start of a nightmare. The first 48 hours were a blur of police interviews, search parties, and media attention. Ethan's face was plastered across the local news, then national. The Matthews home phone rang constantly with tips, most leading nowhere. Sarah barely slept, convinced that each passing hour reduced the chances of finding her son. Every lead Detective Garcia assured them on day 4, but Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes. The search expanded from their suburban neighborhood to the surrounding woods and lakes. Divers checked the small pond 2 blocks away. Nothing. No evidence. No witnesses who'd seen anything suspicious at the party. It was as if Ethan had simply vanished into thin air during his own birthday celebration, leaving behind only a half-opened present and his favorite action figure on the grass. Chapter 3. The aftermath. By the 1-year mark, the active investigation had cooled. The Matthews had appeared on every major news program, pleaded for information, offered rewards, they'd consulted private investigators and psychics alike. Their marriage strained under the weight of their grief, with Mike throwing himself into work while Sarah kept Ethan's room exactly as he'd left it, dusting it weekly. On the 2nd anniversary of his disappearance, they held a small memorial. Service, not a funeral, Sarah had insisted fiercely. Without a body, without proof, she refused to give up hope. But as the years passed, even she began to accept that the cheerful little boy with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile might never come home. They moved to a new house in the same city, unable to bear the memories in their old backyard, but unwilling to leave the place where Ethan had last been seen. 8 years had passed since Ethan's disappearance. Sarah Matthews had learned to live with the hollow space inside her chest, the ever-present ache that never quite went away. She and Mike had divorced 3 years after losing Ethan, not because they didn't love each other, but because they couldn't bear to witness each other's pain anymore. Mike had remarried last year, a kind woman named Rebecca, who never tried to replace Sarah or make Mike forget. But Sarah remained single, working as an elementary school counselor, channeling her maternal instincts into helping other people's children. On Saturdays, Sarah volunteered with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, helping other families navigate the bureaucratic maze she knew all too well. She kept a small photo of Ethan on her desk, not his school picture, which had been circulated nationwide after his disappearance, but a candid shot of him laughing on a swing, his hair tousled by the wind. Sometimes new clients would recognize him from the old news stories, and Sarah would have to explain that, yes, she was that mother, and no, they never found him. The police had developed various theories over the years. A non-custodial parent at the party who took the wrong child, a predator who had been watching the neighborhood and seized an opportunity. But without evidence, without witnesses, the case had gone cold. Sarah kept a box underneath her bed with newspaper clippings, case notes, and business cards from the parade of detectives who had promised to find her son. Every few months, she'd take it out, spread the contents across her bedroom floor, and search for something, anything she might have missed. Mike had stopped doing this after year 3. Sarah couldn't stop, even as the exercise grew more painful with each passing year. "You need to find closure," her therapist often suggested, but Sarah would shake her head. "Not without answers." She'd reply, "Not without knowing." It was an ordinary Sunday morning in December, 9 years after the disappearance. Sarah was wrapping Christmas presents for her nieces while half watching television. She still bought a gift for Ethan each year this time. a model rocket kit that would have suited a 16-year-old boy with an interest in science, wrapped it before donating it to a children's charity. It was her private ritual, her way of marking the passage of time. The commercials came on, and Sarah reached for her coffee, barely paying attention to the advertisements for holiday sales and new car models. Then a toy commercial began playing some new, interactive building set that was apparently the must-have gift of the season. The commercial showed children of various ages playing with the colorful blocks, constructing elaborate structures that lit up and moved. Sarah was about to look away when something caught her eye. In the background of the commercial, almost out of frame, was a teenager with dark hair. He was tall and lanky, with a slightly crooked smile as he helped a younger child attach pieces together. There was nothing particularly remarkable about him. He was just one of several kids. Featured in the commercial, but Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. Her heart pounded as she scrambled for the remote, rewinding the DVR to watch the commercial again and again. The teenager was on screen for perhaps 3 seconds, but Sarah didn't need more time. She knew that smile, knew the particular way his left eyebrow arched slightly higher than his right when he was concentrating. She'd seen that same expression thousands of times as she'd watched her son complete puzzles or build with Legos. She whispered, her hand pressed against the television screen. "It's you." Common sense told her she was being irrational. The boy in the commercial would be approximately the right age, yes, but so would millions of other teenage boys. The resemblance could be coincidental, her mind playing tricks, seeing what she desperately wanted to see. Yet something deep inside her, the same maternal instinct that had kept her searching for 9 years, screamed that she was right. With shaking hands, she took a photo of the screen with her phone, then searched online for the toy company's name. "Wonderworks Building Systems?" she read aloud. Her imagination comes to life. Sarah's first call was to Detective Garcia, who had been the lead on Ethan's case. He had retired 2 years ago, but had given Sarah his personal number, telling her to call if she ever needed anything. She'd used it only once before, when a boy resembling Ethan had been spotted in Seattle. That lead, like all the others, had led nowhere. "Sarah," he answered on the third ring, his voice cautious. Probably expected another false alarm, another desperate hope that would end in disappointment. "I found him," she said without preamble, "in a commercial. I know how it sounds, but please, just look." To his credit, Garcia didn't dismiss her. He asked her to send the video and photos and promised to call back after reviewing them. Sarah paced her living room for 45 excruciating minutes before her phone rang. "I see the resemblance," Garcia admitted, his tone measured. "But Sarah, this could be coincidence. The boy in the commercial has similar features, but it's not just the features," Sarah interrupted. "It's the expressions, the mannerisms. A mother knows." Garcia sighed. "I'll make some calls." The commercial would have been produced by an ad agency that cast the kids. It'll take some time to track down who they used and where they found him. Sarah knew what he wasn't saying, that even if they identified the boy, even if there was a resemblance, it would be nearly impossible to prove he was Ethan. After 9 years, DNA evidence from their home would be compromised. Ethan had been too young to have dental records that could be definitively matched. If someone had taken him and raised him as their own, the boy himself might not even know he was kidnapped. Still, it was the first real lead they'd had in years. Within days, the case was officially reopened. Sarah's ex-husband Mike was skeptical but supportive, coming over to view the commercial himself. "I don't know, Sarah," he said gently. "Want it to be him too? But ... just wait," she told him. "Wait until we find him." Through Garcia's police connections and a private investigator Sarah hired with money she'd been saving for Ethan's college fund, they discovered that the commercial had been filmed in Chicago, 3 states away from where they lived. The casting had been done through a local talent agency that specialized in finding real kids, not actors for commercials. The agency was initially reluctant to share information about their clients, citing privacy concerns, but a court order, secured by Garcia's former colleagues, changed their minds. The boy's name, according to the casting paperwork, was Alex Reeves. He lived with his father, Daniel Reeves, in a suburb of Chicago. He was 15 years old, 1 year younger than Ethan would be now. But if you've made it this far, you already know this is no ordinary missing child case. Before we go deeper into the investigation, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Here at Gone Cold, we bring you deeply researched, true stories that the mainstream media has long forgotten. If you're someone who believes these cases deserve to be remembered, click like now. It helps more people discover stories like Ethan's and keeps these cold cases from being buried for good. Paperwork could easily have been falsified. There was a school photo attached to his casting profile. When Sarah saw it, she nearly collapsed. "That's my son," she whispered, tracing the outline of his face. "That's Ethan." Sarah had imagined this moment countless times over the past 9 years, finding Ethan, running to him, embracing him as tears streamed down both their faces. But reality was far more complicated. Detective Garcia and the Chicago police had warned her against direct contact. If Daniel Reeves was indeed the kidnapper, confronting him could put both Sarah and the boy in danger. Reeves might flee with Alex if he suspected the authorities were closing in. "We need to do this by the book," Garcia had insisted during a tense conference call. "We need evidence before we make any moves." So instead of the tearful reunion she'd dreamed of, Sarah found herself sitting in an unmarked police car across from Lincoln Park High School on a frigid January morning. She wore a borrowed Chicago PD parka, her hair tucked under a knit cap, looking for all the world like an officer on stakeout duty. Beside her, Detective Alicia Wong from Chicago's Missing Persons Unit checked her watch. "School lets out at 3:15, Wong said. "We're just here to confirm visual identification. No contact." Sarah nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The last hour had been the longest of her life, worse even than those first terrible hours after Ethan's disappearance. Because now, hope had returned with crushing force. At 3:12, students began streaming out of the building. Sarah's eyes darted frantically from face to face, searching for the boy from the commercial. "There," Wong said suddenly, pointing discreetly. "Blue jacket, black backpack. That's Alex Reeves." Sarah's world narrowed to a tunnel as she watched the lanky teenager descend the school steps. He moved with an easy grace, laughing at something a friend had said. From this distance, the resemblance was undeniable. The shape of his face, the set of his shoulders, the way he gestured with his hands when he spoke. Sarah pressed her palm against the cold window, an unconscious echo of how she'd touched the television screen weeks earlier. "It's him," she whispered. "It's Ethan." Wong said nothing, her expression professionally neutral, but she made a note in her small leather-bound notebook. They followed at a distance as Alex and his friends walked 6 blocks, eventually stopping at a cafe where the group ordered hot chocolates and shared a plate of fries. Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away. Her boy dipped his fries in ketchup and then mustard exactly as Ethan had always done. It was such a small thing, such a specific habit that Sarah felt lightheaded. "His father picks him up from here most days," Wong explained. "We have officers stationed nearby to follow them home." 40 minutes later, a silver Honda pulled up outside the cafe. Lex waved goodbye to his friends and jogged to the car, his breath visible in the cold air. For a brief moment, Sarah caught a glimpse of the driver, a man in his 40s with a closely trimmed beard. "That's Daniel Reeves," Wong confirmed. "We're running background checks, but so far he seems to have a solid history in Chicago. Works as an architect, active in the community, no criminal record." "That doesn't mean anything," Sarah said, her voice stronger now, fueled by certainty and anger. "Kidnappers don't always look like monsters." The investigation progressed. With excruciating slowness, Sarah had temporarily relocated to Chicago, telling her employer she needed personal leave. She rented a small furnished apartment not far from Alex's school, though she honored the police directive not to approach him. Instead, she channeled her restless energy into helping the investigation however she could. Daniel Reeves's background was proving difficult to verify. He had appeared in Chicago 8 years ago, establishing his architectural practice and integrating into the community. Before that, records showed he had lived in Seattle, but attempts to contact former colleagues or neighbors there yielded little information. His wife Lax's supposed mother had died of cancer when the boy was 7, according to what Reeves had told neighbors. There were no school records for Alex before 3rd grade in Chicago. The timeline fits, Garcia pointed out during one of their daily calls. Ethan disappeared 9 years ago. This man shows up in Chicago with a young boy approximately a year later. What they needed was DNA evidence. A court order for a direct test would require more substantial proof than they currently had. It would alert Reeves to the investigation. Instead, the Chicago police devised an alternative approach. On a Tuesday in late January, officers from the Chicago PD visited Lincoln Park High School to give a presentation on careers in law enforcement. As part of the demonstration, they collected fingerprint samples from several students, including Alex. They also distributed water bottles and carefully collected Alex's after the presentation. 2 agonizing days later, Wong called Sarah to her office. Mike had flown in from their hometown, and together they sat across from Wong and her lieutenant as the results were explained. The fingerprints weren't conclusive, Wang began, and Sarah felt her heart sink. Ethan was too young when he disappeared to have prints on file for comparison. But, the lieutenant interjected, the DNA test from the water bottle is another story. He slid a folder across the desk. We compared it to samples from both of you. The results indicate a 99.9% probability that Alex Reeves is your biological son. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Mike reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it tightly as tears streamed down both their faces. It wasn't just maternal intuition or desperate hope. It was scientific fact. Alex Reeves was Ethan Matthews. What happens now? Mike asked, his voice ragged. Now we move carefully, the lieutenant said. We're building a case against Daniel Reeves. We need to establish jurisdiction since the kidnapping occurred in another state. And most importantly, we need to plan how to approach Ethan or Alex, as he knows himself in the least traumatic way possible. Sarah hadn't considered this aspect fully. For 9 years, she had focused solely on finding Ethan. But now she forced herself to confront the reality. Her son had lived more than half his life as someone else. He had no memory of his life before the kidnapping, or had been convinced that life was somehow a lie. How would he react to learning that his entire identity had been built on deception? That the man he called father was actually his kidnapper? He needs to know the truth, she said firmly. But I don't want to traumatize him further. Whatever approach gives him the best chance at ... at understanding. The lieutenant nodded. We've consulted with child psychologists who specialize in abduction cases. They recommend having a familiar authority figure make the initial disclosure in a safe, neutral environment, with you nearby, but not immediately present. The plan was set for Friday. Alex would be called to the guidance counselor's office at school, where a psychologist and Detective Wong would gently begin the process of telling him who he really was. Sarah and Mike would wait in an adjoining room, ready to be introduced when Alex was ready. Friday morning dawned gray and snowy. Sarah hadn't slept, rehearsing what she would say to her son when they finally spoke. Should she call him Ethan or Alex? Should she mention memories from his early childhood, or would that overwhelm him? There was no guidebook for this situation, no right way to reclaim a stolen child. At the school, Sarah and Mike were escorted to a small conference room adjacent to the guidance counselor's office. Through a one-way mirror, they could see a simple arrangement, a comfortable sofa, several chairs, a table with water and snacks. Dr. Harriet Chen, the psychologist, arranged her materials while Detective Wang spoke quietly with the school principal. Remember, Dr. Chen had cautioned them earlier. This is just the beginning of a long process. Today isn't about reunification, it's about disclosure. He may be confused, angry, even disbelieving. Whatever his reaction, we follow his lead. At precisely 10:15, the guidance counselor entered with Alex. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her son, taller than she had imagined he would be, with the same dark hair but styled differently than the little boy in her memories, looked curiously around the room. Alex, the counselor said, these people need to speak with you about something important. I'll be right outside if you need me. From behind the glass, Sarah watched as Wang introduced herself and Dr. Chen. Alex sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, his expression wary. "Am I in trouble?" he asked, and the sound of his voice, deeper now, but with the same slight inflection she remembered, brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes. "No, not at all," Dr. Chen assured him. "But we do have some difficult information to share with you. Information about your past." Over the next 20 minutes, with gentle precision, Dr. Chen explained that new evidence had emerged suggesting Alex's early childhood might be different than he had been told. She showed him age progression photos created from Ethan Matthews. Childhood pictures placed side by side with his current school photo. "That does kind of look like me," Alex admitted, clearly uncomfortable. "But I don't understand. My dad said we moved to Chicago after my mom died." "Alex," Detective Wang said carefully, "we have reason to believe that the man you know as your father is not biologically related to you. DNA evidence suggests that your biological parents are Sarah and Michael Matthews." Alex shot to his feet, his face flushing. "That's insane. My dad is my dad. He has pictures of me as a baby, with my mom before she died." "We believe those pictures may have been altered," Wang continued calmly. "We've confirmed through DNA testing that you are the biological son of the Matthews family." "This is crazy," Alex insisted, pacing now. "My dad would never, couldn't have... Dr. Chen gently steered the conversation toward Alex's earliest memories. Could he recall anything before Chicago? Did he remember his 7th birthday party? Had he ever felt that something about his past didn't quite make sense? As she spoke, Sarah saw confusion flicker across her son's face. He sat back down heavily, staring at his hands. "I don't remember much before Chicago," he admitted quietly. "Dad said it was because of the trauma of losing Mom. But sometimes I have these dreams about a different house, the treehouse in the backyard." ... double quotes softly. The treehouse had been Ethan's favorite place, a sanctuary Mike had built. "For his 5th birthday? Your biological parents are here today?" Dr. Chen said after a long pause. "They've been looking for you for 9 years. Would you be willing to meet them? Just to talk?" Alex looked up, his expression a complex mixture of emotions, fear, confusion, anger, and underneath it all, a flicker of curiosity. After what seemed like an eternity, he gave a single, short nod. Dr. Chen came to the door of the conference room. "He's ready," she said quietly. "Remember, follow his lead." Sarah's legs felt like water as she and Mike walked into the counselor's office. 9 years of searching, of hoping against hope, had led to this moment. She forced herself not to rush forward, not to embrace the teenager who stood awkwardly by the window, his arms crossed protectively over his chest. "Hello, Alex," she said, her voice somehow steady, despite the earthquake happening inside her. "I'm Sarah. This is Mike." Alex studied them intently, his eyes, Fan's eyes moving from Sarah's face to Mike's and back again. "They say you're my real parents," he said finally, his voice cracking slightly. "Yes," Mike answered. "We've been looking for you since. You disappeared. Since you were taken." Alex shook his head as if trying to clear it. "I don't remember you," he said, and despite Dr. Chen's warnings, the words stung. "But I do remember... something. A Batman cake and a bounce house." Sarah couldn't hold back a small sob. "For your 7th birthday," she whispered. "You disappeared." Something shifted in Alex's expression, then not recognition exactly, but a crack in the wall of disbelief. He uncrossed his arms slowly, uncertain. "I don't know what to do with this," he admitted. "If what you're saying is true, then my whole life is. I don't even know who I am." "Hear you," Sarah said simply. "Whatever name you want to use, whatever happens next, that doesn't change. We've missed you so much." Alex or Ethan, or some complex combination of both, looked out the window at the falling snow, his profile so achingly familiar that Sarah had to restrain herself from reaching out to touch him, to confirm he was real. "What happens now?" he asked finally, echoing the question Mike had posed days earlier. Dr. Chen answered carefully. "That depends on many factors. There will be legal proceedings, and Daniel Reeves will likely face charges. But as for you, Take things one step at a time, following what feels comfortable for you. Alex nodded slowly, then turned back to Sarah and Mike. For the first time, a hint of vulnerability showed through his confusion. Could you? Would you tell me about before? About who I was? Of course, Sarah said, her heart swelling with a cautious hope. We can tell you everything, whenever you're ready to hear it. It wasn't the tearful reunion she had imagined all these years. There were no easy resolutions, no instant recognition or reclaimed memories. But as Alex hesitantly sat down across from them, willing to listen, willing to consider the possibility of a different truth than the one he had known, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in 9 years, the first fragile beginnings of healing. 6 months had passed since that snowy January day when Alex Reeves learned he was born Ethan Matthews. The evidence against Daniel Reeves had mounted quickly after his arrest. Investigators found Ethan's original birth certificate, newspaper, clippings about his disappearance, and a journal documenting the abduction, a confession in Reeves' own handwriting. The story that emerged was tragic. Reeves had lost his own 7-year-old son to leukemia and his wife to suicide shortly after. Something in him had broken, his mind creating a delusion that he could replace his lost child. He had scouted birthday parties, found Ethan, and after kidnapping him, kept the boy sedated for weeks while creating new identities for them both. By the time the sedatives were discontinued, Ethan, now Alex, had become confused enough that Reeves' lies took root. Reeves pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 20 years in prison with psychiatric treatment. For Alex, the revelation had triggered a profound identity crisis. Who was he? The boy who had disappeared from a superhero-themed birthday party, or the teenager who had built a life in Chicago? Today, on a warm July afternoon, he sat on the deck of the Matthews' new home, a house they had purchased in Chicago to be near him during the transition. He had chosen to keep using the name Alex. It's who I've been for longer than I was Ethan. He had explained to Sarah, who had accepted his decision with understanding. Rather than forcing an immediate return to their original hometown, the Matthews had made the difficult decision to relocate, allowing Alex to finish high school with his established friends and in familiar surroundings. "Hey," Sarah said, stepping onto the deck with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Mind some company?" Alex smiled and gestured to the chair beside him. Their relationship had evolved cautiously over the months, building from awkward initial conversations to a growing comfort. "I found something I thought you might want to see," she said, setting down a small photo album. "Oh, if you're ready." Together, they opened the album to reveal photos of Ethan's early childhood moments that had been stolen from Alex's memory. There he was as a toddler taking his first steps, as a kindergartner proudly showing off a missing tooth. "You were always building things," Sarah commented as they came across a photo of 5-year-old Ethan constructing a Lego structure. "Even before. I guess that's why that toy commercial caught my eye." Alex ran his finger over the photo. "I remember some of this now," he said quietly. "Not clearly, more like impressions, feelings." "Dad Mike said he's thinking about building a treehouse here," Alex continued, looking at the large oak in their backyard. Was the first time he had referred to Mike as Dad, even with the immediate correction. "You practically lived in that treehouse during the summer," she told him. Alex was silent for a moment. "I've been thinking about college," he said finally. "I want to study architecture." I gave a wry smile. Ironic, I guess, considering ... everything. "That's not ironic," Sarah said. "That's you being you, regardless of what happened. The thing is, there's a good program at the state university back where you used to live, where I was born." He looked at her directly. "I was thinking maybe I could apply there. It would mean moving back after graduation." Sarah struggled to control her emotions. "If that's what you want, we would support that completely."
Yes.
"I think I want to try," Alex said. "Not to become Ethan Agunai. Don't think I can ever be that person. But to understand him better. To integrate him into who I am now." From inside came the sound of Mike arriving with dinner. As they walked inside together, Sarah reflected on their journey. Her son was not the same boy who had disappeared 9 years ago. The child was gone, replaced by this thoughtful young man with his complex history. But beneath the differences, beneath the trauma and lost years, There remained something essential, a connection that even the most elaborate deception couldn't permanently sever. In the kitchen, Alex helped Mike unpack the takeout containers while Sarah gathered plates. It wasn't the family life she had once envisioned. It was messier, more complicated, still healing from wounds that might never fully close. But as Alex laughed at something Mike said, his smile momentarily matching the one in those old photographs, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. Sometimes finding what was lost means accepting that it has been transformed by its absence. And sometimes, that transformation reveals something new and equally precious in its place. Ethan's story is one no parent should have to experience. A child disappearing in the middle of his own birthday party, no clues, no closure, no goodbye. If this story touched you, click like now and consider subscribing to Gone Cold. Your support helps us continue telling stories that demand answers and accountability. And we want to hear your opinion. What do you think happened to Ethan Matthews? Have you ever experienced a moment when someone disappeared without warning in your life or community? Comment below. We feature the most insightful responses in our weekly spotlight, and your perspective can help keep attention on cases like this.